New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
New Thought Media Network is excited to present Divine Science Everywhere, Fridays at 2 p.m. Mountain Time and 4 p.m. Eastern. Come explore a modern experience of divine science. With Reverend Joy Fletcher, Reverend Jeff Radcliff, and Bishop Durrell Watkins. Join us as we open our eyes to divine science everywhere we look. Fridays on New Thought Media Network.
Welcome to Divine Science Everywhere. Divine Science Everywhere features divine science ministers and New Thought guests discussing the principles and practice of divine science. I'm Reverend Joy Fletcher, and I'm so glad that you could join us today. Currently, I'm serving as the president of Divine Science Ministers Association, and I'm also a member of the Divine Science Federation International. And one of the ways, or some of the ways that I express my ministry is through hospice. I'm a hospice bereavement coordinator, as well as a death doula, and I also present grief support workshops. I'd like to introduce one of my colleagues, Reverend Jeff Radcliff.
Hey, everybody. Nice to see you all out there. I'm Reverend Jeff, and I can tell you a little bit about myself like Reverend Joyful did. I'm on the board of Divine Science Ministers Association, as well as a board member of Divine Science Federation International. Also belong to the International New Thought Alliance and the affiliated New Thought Network. Look for me on Facebook, Giati Ministries, Giati Ministries, and that is God is all there is, because as divine science tells you, that's true. God is all there is. Also, our beloved colleague, the Bishop Durrell Watkins, is here. Hey.
Hey everyone, I am Durrell Watkins. I'm the Senior Minister of the Sunshine Cathedral in Fort Lauderdale. That's sunshinecathedral.org. I am the current president of the Divine Science Federation. My immediate past predecessor is on the panel today, and I am a bishop with the Global Justice Institute. One of our colleagues and friends, Candace G, likes to say, because I'm very out and an activist about lots of things. So she says that I am not only gay by God, I am gay for God. And I always love that. I'm going to put that on a business card before it's over. But this is Pride Month, and so that was sort of on my mind. And I am the person who will say inappropriate things like that. We're talking about serious divine science stuff, and I just go off chasing rabbits about pride and whatever else pops into my mind. That's my job. Also, I had a colonoscopy today, so I'm still stoned from anesthesia. If you're over 50, get it. You got to get it. You got to know what's going on. And so it's a good thing. So that's why I'm here. And we are here because Reverend Joyful and Reverend Jeff said, let's do a thing. And they made it happen. And we are off to a great start. A lot of people are watching us, and you can always like and share, and please do. And then even more people will be watching us. But before we get into our conversation, which is always enlightening and lively, Reverend Joy will lead us in a centering moment.
All right, thank you. First, I'm going to read an excerpt from Harmony Magazine. It's somewhere the issue from 1899 to 1900. This is by Melinda Elliott Kramer. With the birth of souls, God imparts to them essential and original knowledge. The soul mirrors the universe and stands in personal reflection to all things. She is illuminated with an inward light. But the tempest of all passions, the multitude of central impressions, dissipates and darkens the light, its glory diffusing itself only when it burns alone and peace and harmony prevail within us. When liberated from all outward impressions and desirous only of being guided by this light, then only do we find pure and certain knowledge. In this state of consciousness, the soul analyzes all objects upon which its attention rests. It unites wholly with them, pierces through their substance, and penetrates even to God Himself by feeling His presence in the most important truth. End of quote. Now, in this sacred teaching, we're reminded of the divine science principles that the soul is not separate from the infinite. It's an expression of God, the divine, our own self-knowing. So though the world around us may seem to be fraught with confusion, conflict, or even fear, the divine light remains unchanged within us. In moments of social unrest or political upheaval, we may be tempted to react from the surface of things, but our calling, our spiritual heritage, is to turn inward, not to escape the world, but to re-enter it, grounded in truth. So now let us take a few moments to open to the inward light of God, the divine, that cannot be dimmed by circumstance. So if you're comfortable, close your eyes. Begin by gently bringing your awareness to your breath and feel the rise and fall. This sacred presence, this sacred rhythm within you as well as within me and within each other. Let this breath and the breath of all living things be aware of this divine presence, this divine light, this divine peace, knowing that everyone and everything is whole and holy in expression. Imagine a quiet, radiant light glowing at the center of your being. This is the inward light, the divine spark, divine wholeness. It is the presence, the pure presence of the divine in you. Within your heart, your body, your emotions, your mind. Allow it to clear away any sense of fear or worry or even anger. Now silently affirm, I am guided by this inward light of truth. Peace begins with me. the light of divine presence is here now. As the world may seem to swirl with uncertainty, remember, you're grounded in the eternal. I am grounded in the eternal. And everyone and everything is grounded in the eternal. We recognize that we're not ignoring the world. Instead, we are infusing our awareness, our vision with clarity, compassion, and the strength that is born of inner stillness. So as we prepare to return to this moment, know this: your light, my light, everyone's light is not small. It is the spark of the infinite. Let it guide every action through your presence, through your word, your intentions. Let it be the calm, the balm in what appears to be divided times. Instead, let us know the truth. Divine science, in all, through all, as all. And so it is.
So it is.
Fabulous. Thank you for that. We usually don't respond to the reflection. It's a standalone situation. But when you were talking about the divine breath, I was reminded that Sunday, just behind us, was Pentecost Sunday, where we focus on, if you follow the calendar and the stories and all that, that's the story of the divine breath enlivening a new movement and all that sort of thing. So I thought that was very timely. And also, I meant to say earlier that your ministry has inspired someone already. Someone told me last week that they are beginning studying to become an end-of-life doula because of your story last year at the Divine Science Conference. And so they're adding that to their ministry because they were so inspired by your story. So there's that. Now, before we get into some rowdy conversation, and it does get just off the chain sometimes, I need to do a little pitch here because we're charting a new course. The Divine Science Federation International and the Divine Science Ministers Association invite you to join Charting a New Course Retreat at Sea. It's a 5-day, 4-night cruise aboard the MSC Seashore starting at, write this down, just $299. Yes, this is a $300 cruise. You can zhuzh it up and add some coinage to that, but you can have it for $300. It departs November the 2nd, 2025, and this all-inclusive getaway features free bus transfers from Ocala, Florida, the villages in Florida, and Leesburg, plus free Wi-Fi throughout your journey. You can also enjoy an open bar for only $99 more for the whole trip, and that's both on board and on a private island marine reserve. You'll explore Nassau and Paradise Island in the Bahamas and relax on MSC's exclusive island, Ocean Cay Marine Reserve. Special perks from the Happening Out Travel Club include private happy hours and exclusive dining events. You can book your spot with a $199 deposit, and then you only have 100 more to go, unless you want to add some perks, and you can. And so you can do all of that by just putting $199 down anytime now. If you haven't heard of Divine Science, maybe this is your first time hearing about us or watching us. Maybe you've been around for 100 years. But either way, if you haven't heard of Divine Science or you haven't heard of us lately, you have heard of what Divine Science is about. If you like Oprah and Chopra, Louise Hay and Michael Beckwith, spirituality that is based on love rather than dogma, or you were familiar with Silent Unity and the Daily Word, or the progressive, positive, practical spirituality of the Sunshine Cathedral community, then you already have a pretty good understanding of divine science, a New Thought school of thought that has been around since 1888. This nonprofit 501c3 trip is provided at reduced prices. That's why you're getting 5 days for $300 and a lot of good stuff in it. That's because of the charity fundraising educational mission of the travel club. So we invite you to join us on this amazing cruise for fun, connection, and spiritual renewal. Be a little teaching, quite a bit of praying, and a lot of partying. That's a perfect spiritual retreat. And so for more information or to reserve your spot, please visit divinesciencefederation.org. I sometimes just instinctively throw out a different address there, but no, you'll want to go to divinesciencefederation.org, click on events, and then all you have to do is make a deposit and wait for November 2nd to roll around. We're going to have a lot of fun. Now, before we get into just God knows what. It's going to get good. Oh, I just feel it. It's just going to get, I may have to shout. There's not a lot of shouting in New Thought, but there might be some today. But before we get to that, let's take a quick commercial break here at Divine Science Everywhere on New Thought Media Network.
New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Before we get started, if it's okay, we've got weather moving through my area right now, and my yappy little Pomeranian does not like thunder and lightning, so I can't get her to be quiet. So you'll just have to live with her like I do. and we need to do tell you something else. Reverend Joy and Bishop Durrell and I have told you before that we are looking for new things to bring to the show to make it interesting and fun for everyone. One of the things is it's exciting is we're going to start acknowledging birthdays of our Divine Science ministers, as well as some of our leading Divine Science lights. And this is especially exciting because yesterday was the birthday of our founder, Melinda Kramer, who was born in Indiana in 1844. And so she'd be 181 years old this year. If
it wasn't for that earthquake, she'd be on the show.
If it wasn't for that earthquake, she had 10 siblings, and she was raised as a Quaker. Now, the Quaker part came in really handy whenever she would meditate and sit in the silence. But I'm thinking to myself, when you got 10 brothers and sisters, it's not going to be very quiet in that house. Mm-hmm. She had some persistent health problems. Now, Divine Science is pretty well established. We were the original New Thought organization before Unity, before Religious Science, before Universal Foundation for Better Living. There was Divine Science, but we're probably the best kept secret in New Thought. So here's just a little background on Melinda Kramer. She had some persistent health issues, and the doctor said, move to California for your health. 1800s, that's what they did. So she went to San Francisco. She met her husband, Charles Light Kramer, who was a photographer. 1885, she had a divine revelation that she described as an hour of earnest meditation and prayerful seeking, and a realization of oneness with life and a gleam of its truth. And her health issues started resolving from that moment on, and she was healed of her issues. In May of 1888, she founded the Home College of Divine Science, and later in that year, August, she began publishing Harmony Magazine, which Reverend Joyful read from a little bit ago. She had on its cover the description that read, a monthly magazine of philosophy devoted to truth, science of spirit, theosophy, metaphysics, and the Christ method of healing. And it carried selections and essays from all over the world, many different world religious traditions and whatnot. And 4 years after that, Melinda founded the International Divine Science Association. In February 1889, while she was teaching in Denver, Fanny Brooks James attended some of her classes, and that's how the Colorado branch of the movement began to take shape. In 1892, Fanny and her husband moved to Denver. Her sister, Nona Brooks, moved to Denver in 1893, and then they were followed by their sister, Aletha Brooks Small. And that was in 1895, I believe. In 1898, the Colorado College of Divine Science was established with Melinda's help. So the Brooks sisters and Melinda Kramer joined forces to make divine science a unified teaching. And Melinda ordained Nona Brooks in December of 1898. Reverend Brooks didn't waste any time. She started the first Church of Divine Science in Denver a month later in 1899. And so I just wanted to give you a little background on what our founder was about. And here is probably my favorite quote from her. It's more of an affirmative prayer. But Melinda Kramer wrote this, and she said, "There is no power in conditions. There's no power in personality. Even my own misguided thinking can no longer hurt me, as I see it as false. I turn to the infinite wisdom within for clarification. The truth is revealed to me, and this truth is my healing. God speaks to me in my own mind, coming through something I read or the spoken word of others. I no longer resist criticism. It may be God speaking to me through one of God's other children. Nothing can stand in the way of truth. It cuts through my mistaken thinking as a strong light pierces the darkness. I'm willing to have the truth revealed to me, though it shatters my ego. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. I accept correction. I rejoice in discipline. I am glad to give up all negative thinking. God alone has power over me. This power is love. It will not fail me or forsake me. I am continually grateful that this is so." My favorite Melinda Kramer quote. Now, I say all that to tell you, like we said earlier, her birthday was yesterday, and we are going to go forward with birthdays from some of our other ministers and teachers. For the month of June, we've got 4 of them. Just passed on June 10th, her birthday, Reverend Dr. Dorothy Anita Johnson. We have Reverend Sadari Corden and Reverend Jeanette Youngman. Their birthdays are the day after tomorrow on June 15th. And what's cool about Reverend Jeanette is she was ordained through the Divine Science College in Australia, where she lives. And we also have Reverend Bill Chapman. His birthday is coming up on June 23rd. So we're going to wish the ladies happy belated birthdays. Well, happy belated for Dr. Dorothy Anita, and happy birthday in advance to Reverend Sorry, Reverend Jeanette, and Reverend Bill, whose birthday is June 23rd. And lastly, since we're going to give a shout out to birthdays in advance, let's not forget our panelist today, Reverend Dr. Tim Stewart, who's got a birthday coming up. We will acknowledge you in July as well, but we just want to say happy early birthday. Reverend Joyful, back to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I loved it. I love that. So it is my pleasure to introduce our guest today. Dr. Tim Stewart began his New Thought journey 28 years ago in religious science, and it expanded his studies to divine science 24 years ago. He completed practitioner training in religious science through what was then Religious Science International, now part of Centers for Spiritual Living. Coming from a traditional background, he previously served as minister to congregations in Tennessee, Georgia, and Louisiana. and held the position of president at Evangel Bible Institute, now known as Omega Bible Institute. He was ordained in divine science through the United Divine Science Seminary, in the same seminary as Bishop Durrell. His academic background includes degrees from Lee University in Cleveland, Tennessee, Evangel Christian University in Louisiana, the University of Metaphysics, and the University of Sedona. Dr. Tim holds certifications as a hypnotherapist, hypnotherapy instructor, and spiritual life coach. His leadership roles have included serving as president of the Divine Science Federation International and the Divine Science Ministers Association. He currently serves as vice president of the Divine Science Ministers Association and president of the International New Thought Alliance. So, welcome today. We'd like to welcome Tim Stewart. So tell us a little bit about your ministry today.
I wish you'd do something. Oh my gosh, would you?
Well, I just stay bored because I have nothing to do. Yes, the majority of my time is really been focused with INTA. And INTA is really about, and one of the reasons that I was so drawn to INTA years ago is because I was in an environment that was religious science. I was studying divine science, but I was in that environment and there wasn't any real interaction. You didn't interact so much with unity locally. Even if you were in, there were two religious science organizations at that time. There was RSI, Religious Science International, and there was the United Church of Religious Science. And there wasn't a lot of interaction between those two, even to the point that if you were in a town that, let's say that UCRS was going to hold a conference there and you were at an RSI church, it wouldn't even be announced at your church sometimes. Okay. So there was all of this. And then I heard of INTA, and the first INTA conference that I went to, which we call our annual Congress, I met all of these wonderful people, and some of them were from divine science, and some were from Unity, and some were from the Universal Foundation for Better Living. Some were from other groups. There was even one that I met with who was from the Church of Truth, because yes, they still have a church out there. And I began looking, and I remember the very first time that I spoke at an INTA Congress. One of the things that I mentioned in that, because I was looking at all the different people, and we have diversity in New Thought. We have diversity in INTA. And mentioning that, I'll put a little plug in here, and on behalf of INTA, I will say Happy Pride Month, because we are loving and supporting of everyone in being exactly who they are. Back to the story, though, I saw all of this diversity within New Thought, not just of sexual orientations or anything like that, but even the varying of beliefs to an extent. We had our core, we had our foundations, but people had their own unique things. And I said, we need to really embrace that diversity, and that drew me to INTA and made me really see that it was part of having all of New Thought work together, which, as I've come to see, divine science does that very same thing. They really do. And I forget, I think it was Jeff a moment ago, mentioned the International Divine Science Association. Mm-hmm. And if you read the preface to Divine Science and Healing, which was written by Melinda Kramer, if you read the preface to that, it refers to the International Divine Science Association as a prototype of the International New Thought Alliance. So it is that embracing of everyone that draws me to it. We have a lot going on, and I'm sure you'll give me a chance to talk again later, but I'm gonna see what else you'd like to know.
Well, you said that your spiritual journey began 28 years ago in religious science and later expanded into divine science. So, what drew you to step deeper into divine science, and how did that shift influence your spiritual path?
Okay. Let me back up just a little bit, because my spiritual journey, I can't say it, but my journey in New Thought started then. Because if you look, and when I in my bio, you mentioned Lee University, which was Lee College when I went to it, which is in Cleveland, which is owned by the Church of God, which is one of those Pentecostal, tongue-talking, pew-jumping Pentecostal movements. Okay. And so that was my background. My first ministerial work was done within their framework. I went on to another group after that. So my journey had begun there. And I reached a point where I could no longer accept some of the things that I think are perhaps anyone watching, I'm not saying this to be offensive, but they seem absurd to me, that to think that a loving God who would know everything from the beginning would plan some of the horrific things and a quote eternal damnation type situation. This didn't make sense anymore. It did not fit. So went away from that. At the same time, was going through a divorce, and then that's also when I got into hypnotherapy. Met some people from a Unity church, and then started dating a lady who is now my wife, and she had just started going to a religious science church, and that's how I got into that, and that started that journey. And a portion of that was looking at the teachings of religious science and doing everything I could, finding things out. I found that Ernest Holmes had begun in divine science. And I hadn't wanted any of the overly Christian wording in the beginning, because again, religious science doesn't have as much of that. Divine science has more of it. And but I'd had to take a few years for that to heal some, being in what I considered an abusive environment of sometimes very fundamentalist things. So I started getting some divine science material and reading it, started studying it, and it took me over a decade before I finally was able to connect with someone and to formalize those studies. And then, of course, I enjoyed the freedom that divine science had. Structurally, that wasn't so in RSI. And so that was what I was looking for. We rejoice in this wonderful freedom we find when we're in New Thought. We can be who we are. We can do all these things. And now let's make rules that confine us. All right?
Yeah, right. I'm actually the president of, there are 3 divine science schools right now that I know. There may be like something still going on in South Africa and whatever, but there's 3 in the US, and 2 of them are affiliated with DSFI. And I always say that the school that we're like the Montessori of New Thought education, because we're like, the rules just get on our nerves. Like everything is tailor-made for the student. If you already know it, you don't have to pretend to relearn it, whatever. So that could just never happen. That certainly couldn't happen if you were Presbyterian or Episcopalian, or when we talk about freedom, we take it so seriously.
and it's funny that that Bishop Durrell talks about tailor-made, because I came into divine science through Reverend Tim, and he kept talking for a couple of years. You really need to think about this. How about you think about this? And I finally, at the International New Thought Alliance Congress in Nashville in 2019, I said, okay, I'll do this thing. So we did the tailor-made thing that Bishop Durrell talked about. Oh, it was funny that there was one class, and I can't remember what it was, Reverend Tim, that you said, oh, well, Durrell wants you to have this. And I'm like, Oh, okay. So it was tailor made. All right, it was. And Reverend Tim, you and I come from remarkably similar backgrounds as former Pentecostal ministers, and it took me quite a while to, and I still sometimes have those some of that indoctrination, and there's no other word for it, that indoctrinated stuff that I am still letting go of. But it took me a really long time to be able to affirm my divinity. Um, not being so bold like Shirley MacLaine in her movie Out on a Limb, where she gets out on the beach and she says, "I am God." It took me forever to be able to say that. So my question to you is, how long did it take you to come out from under that cloud, that darkness? Because it is a darkness when you are told, God loves you, but God's going to send you to hell if you sin. What other parent does that? So how long did it take you to come out of that?
Well, it took me some time. It wasn't an instant thing. As I said, my wife was an evangelical dater, apparently, because, as I said, by dating her, I got into going to religious science, and I kind of liked. We had great music. We're in Nashville, so we had great music. It was an upbeat atmosphere. I liked it. My Pentecostal background and having studied some of the biblical languages and things, I would hear the minister, who is still one of my very best friends on the face of the earth, he would quote something from the Bible and think, that's kind of out of context, kind of thing.
I do that too.
I would sit there and then, but I liked it, and I started doing things and enjoying them. And finally, someone got me to, two things happened. One being that we had a membership class or committee, trying to remember exactly what it was, but it was one particular committee, and a friend of mine got me on that. So I began engaging, and then I took the first class, which was Thomas Troward course. Troward and I have something in common. He could write a book, and you go through a page and another page, and by the third page you say, "Oh, there's one, a period." Okay, but it was during that and his explanation in the very first chapter that it was like a light bulb that went off. And I want to share something, because I've been doing something. I'm wanting to write a book, and I've got little excerpts that I've done, and I've tweaked them quite a bit to be what I want. This is something from me. You may have, it's been on my Facebook page, but the realization is this: you are the infinite I am. Mm-hmm. Awareness, imagining limitation for the joy of rediscovering its own limitlessness. Mm-hmm. When the dream ends, you awaken, not as someone loved by God, but as God itself. Mm-hmm. This awakening is inevitable. It may come with light, stillness, symbols, or simply knowing, but it will come because it already is. So, Reverend Jeff, for me, it took a while. Mm-hmm. But I believe that it is the ultimate destiny that everyone at some point will awaken to realize their own divinity. Mm-hmm. So for me, it took a while.
And you alluded to your wife a couple of times. Anybody who knows Marcia, Reverend Tim's, she is probably the sweetest person you would ever want to meet. She's my girlfriend. And Tim happily allows me to call her my girlfriend. And she is just wonderful. So
I will let her know that you have referred to her as your girlfriend on the show here.
For everybody, for God and everybody, for God in everybody to see.
Absolutely.
Now, Tim and I also have something in common, is that we are deeply ecumenical. That there has never been a school of thought or denomination or tradition that could hold us And so I didn't go through as many evangelical and Pentecostal. I mean, I had a little vacation in the Assembly of God for a minute, but I haven't had as many evangelical and Pentecostal years, but Episcopal and Catholic and every iteration of New Thought or whatever. But that is actually what is one of the many things so amazing about INTA is that I met Tim at INTA. I discovered divine science at INTA. I'd heard about it. I'd read a couple of things, but I didn't know anything. And then of all the things going on in INTA, divine science is the one's like, I want to be part of that because they showcase everything and not really preferencing one over the other. They just give it all. And that one said, oh, Uncle Divine Science wants you. And so I met Tim there. I discovered divine science there. I heard for the first time, I didn't know anything about a UFBL or Church of Truth. And so, or Kriya Yoga, which I am now initiated into that. So it's all INT is a way to really bring people together and help you find your spot in all of it. And so, so INT is a big gift, and especially a gift for people like Tim and me that we're not going to stop looking just because we think we found something. We're not going to stop looking. And that brings me to my question, because obviously you love some religious science. So Ernest and Fenwick and those people must have some appeal to you, and you love divine science. So Nona and Melinda must, Joseph Murphy and Emmett Fox, they must have some appeal to you. But even in your quote, or your quoting of your sort of saying your vision statement, I heard some Neville. Like I happen to know that you're a big Neville fan. So I love that. He's not divine science. He's not religious science. He's not unity. He's Neville. He's
Correct.
Abdullah Jr. or whatever. So can you talk to us about his influence, Neville's influence, and how that sort of inspires your version of New Thought?
Okay, and you're absolutely right. Let me say this, because Neville inspires, and I've read a lot of Neville. And a lot of times I will say something and realize Neville said that. And in starting this, let me point out one other thing. I was reading, and the first time I read this, and I forget exactly where it was written, but it was Melinda, I think, not known. I believe it was Melinda, who said, God can never be so far away as to be near, for nearness implies separation.
Mm.
But the thing is, and I missaid when I first read that, I read it and I first noticed that, and it really jumped at me. It was Neville. I later found out that had come from Melinda. So Neville quoted Melinda. Okay. But one of the great things about Neville, okay, and what brought me to that is some interest in him from a few quotes that I'd heard and things I'd picked up. I read a book of his called 5 Lessons. And obviously, because I bless people on whatever they do or believe, and if it's something that's different than what I have, as long as it helps you connect to your own divinity, I bless you in that, okay? If it allows you to live with more love and acceptance for every living person, every living thing, I bless that. But I can't take the Bible as a literal thing. Okay,
Don't do it.
I just don't go with that. And Neville, in 5 lessons, and that was literally a 5-lesson course, and he used to travel and rent like a theater or auditorium somewhere, and for 5 nights in a row, he taught this. Lesson 1, that transcript there, second paragraph, he started out by saying that the Bible was totally allegorical. Mm-hmm. And he says, if you're really going to get the best from everything that I am teaching you this week, everything that's covered in these lessons, then you need to, first of all, at least be open enough to let go of the literalness to begin with. He didn't say it's an absolute prerequisite, get out if you can't accept that. But he worded it in a way that just said, hey, if you can lay that aside for a moment, let yourself be open. And to me, that was very important, because believe it or not, I still can quote a lot of Bible. I can quote a lot of Bible. But this was something that allowed me to bring that back in more than anyone else ever had. He teaches oneness in a way that I absolutely love it. Many people don't realize, but Neville was an actor. He was an actor,
Dancer and actor.
On stage in plays. And he likened this relationship of humanity and divinity, I'll put it that way, to like being an actor on a stage. And we've all heard that expression. Life is a play. All of life,
That's Shakespeare. Yeah.
But Neville said, when an actor, a really good actor, goes on stage, they forget about being who they are. And instead, you become in that moment the person you're portraying. You become the character. Right. Actors now like to say they're getting in character. And in that moment, their thoughts don't have anything to do with the life that they live every day. Their thoughts have to do with being that character. And he says, that's what we're doing right now. We are so in this character. And the character of Tim Stewart or Durrell Watkins or Joy Fletcher, Jeff Radcliff, or everybody who's listening, you're in that character of being that person. But just like the person on stage knows full well that at some point they're going to awaken to their real identity. At some point, we awaken to our real identity as a divine being, okay? So Neville just was wonderful in understanding. He talks about imagination, and I couldn't.
Yes. I was hoping you get there.
I could not. I couldn't do Neville justice without bringing that in. And he refers to your imagination as God. Yeah. And here's the thing. So many times we get into, quote, affirmations. And he makes a really great thing. If how many people here, would say, I've done affirmations after affirmations and I'm still stuck. Anybody ever, other than me, anybody ever do that?
Yeah.
But the affirmation, just like prayer, I noticed and I watched a couple episodes of the show before I came on, and somebody had put in the chat, if God is in, why do we pray, or something like that? It was a question. Yeah. We pray to change our own consciousness, our alignment with that truth. Okay. And so Neville has this wonderful way of using imagination, because sometimes we do affirmations and we don't really have the belief underneath of them. And we're shouting those affirmations louder and louder to simply drown out our own disbelief in the thing that we want to accomplish.
Right.
But he says,
not affirming what we accept as truth. We're trying to make a thing, which means we don't believe it.
Right. And he says, imagine it as if it's already there. Pick a scene that confirms
think from the end. Is what he says. Think from the end, or
think from the end. And that's used for some, but he speaks about thinking from the end. But it's, don't think about creating it or getting it. Think about something that's already accomplished it, as if it's already happened, and let it feel real to you. And so he goes into that a lot, and that, because understand, this goes back to hypnotherapy training as well, which hypnotherapy and New Thought mention some of the same people in it. But whatever you can get into your subconscious mind, it does not differentiate between something real or something vividly imagined. So if you can vividly imagine something enough, you begin at that inner level. If you want to get clinical, you can call it the subconscious. If you want to get more spiritual, you could use Proverbs and say, as a man thinketh in his heart, or as a woman thinketh in her heart, as never thinks in their heart. Okay. If you can change that, all right. So the way you are, the Bible says, a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Well, if we can change that, and imagination helps to bypass everything else and get that feeling like it's already there. So
we have a bit of a time crunch, so we're going to take like a 90-second break, or otherwise we won't get it in, and then we'll come in and finish up. But I want to give you some homework. You only have 90 seconds to do it, though. Sunday, Sunday is Trinity Sunday. And so when you were talking about the actor putting on this, getting into character, what people call the persons of the Trinity were originally the personas of the Trinity.
Mm-hmm.
And the personas were the mask that Roman and Greek actors wore.
Mhm.
Because before we developed all these acting techniques, you would just put on the anger, the sad, the scared, the joyful face, and then the words and the mask would carry the story. And so the personas of the Trinity is the one thing putting on whatever costume it needs to be in that moment. Since you are theologically trained as well as metaphysically trained, and we're just moments away from Trinity Sunday, I want you to be thinking about some Trinitarian metaphysical business for when we come back, because right now we've got to take a break. We are Divine Science Everywhere on the New Thought Media Network. We're back. We didn't even need 90 seconds. Thank God. The engineer, the Imagineer of the show is my husband, and I guess he heard my desperation, my desperate plea, and worked it out. So anyway, Dr. Stewart, tell us something. Tell us something about the metaphysical Trinity.
Well, I didn't get my full study time for this assignment.
I gave you false hope.
Pop quiz.
I just took a deep breath and closed my eyes and thought about it. But, whenever we look, and I don't have it on, but, we all have these different things, just like I, being a divine scientist, and I look at Ernest Holmes as a divine science minister who kind of refined the teaching a little bit for, how he wanted to present it, and called it science of mind. Okay. Matter of fact, if you study both of them, you will find many things there. But in that little symbol, the teaching symbol, okay, there are the three segments. It's still the Trinity. I don't know exactly. I wish I understood your question a little better, Durrell. If that was an assignment for class, I would say clarify exactly what you're asking for.
Well, Charles Fillmore talked about mind, idea, expression.
Yes.
Yogananda talked about consciousness, light, and vibration, the universal vibration. Yeah. Of course, we're very clear, omnipresence. And yet, even Melinda talked about the creator, the creative action, and the creation. And so if you could just give like a new thought spin to that old doctrine, which wasn't a doctrine until the 4th century. Jesus didn't know anything about it. But if we want to do something with it, what would we do with it as new thought people?
Okay. Well, again, we look at, and I'll use that science of mind thing for a second. That upper level, if you're familiar with it, it's a circle and looks like it has a V through it, and then there's a couple little lines divide off of kind of a middle section. And that first one is our, I'll say our intellect or our volition, our ability to make a choice. Okay. And that's something we all do. And we in life have to learn to make good choices. Okay. Because that does matter. And then that second section, what we have in our choices, they go into that second section, which is spiritual law. And, it doesn't rationalize and think that this decision or this way we perceive life is wrong. It just simply works to make that be what happens. And that's the creation. That's that end point in that bottom section is the manifestation of it. So when we have that and we look at, I can go all the way back to, those first two segments, especially in humanity, if we go back, and I like using Bible for things as an illustration. Man and woman in the parable of creation, Adam and Eve, okay, parable of creation don't represent two individuals, but represents the whole of humanity, really. And the male, being made from the dust of the earth, is the earthly expression, the outer. Woman, being made from the rib next to the heart, is the soul or the inner. So when you understand that, then the quote fall, which was again, what was it? Eating of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Up to then, everything had been good, 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 good.
Mm-hmm.
So it's literally fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is saying when your consciousness, knowledge, consciousness enters into you of duality, good and evil, you're changing everything. But it had to first be Eve, because Eve represents the consciousness, the soul. And once something enters into the consciousness, it expresses in our outer world. And those are laws and kind of the thing. But you have, again, the soul, the law, the volition, you have the expression. And that's also, we have the law of expression. We have all types of different things that do that quite well. So,
Well, thank you. Thank you. Another hour just flew by. We certainly appreciate that you could join us today, Tim, and we'll look forward to another time. I'd like to tell you about some future shows. Next week, our guests are Reverend Dr. Christine Emmerling and Reverend Cherie Garrett, mother and daughter. They are second, third Divine Science. Yeah.
Couple weeks.
I'm sorry, Reverend Joyful. Point of order. Reverend Christine and Reverend Cherie are the week after.
Yeah.
Next week is
Next week
Kansas
okay.
City.
Thank you. Next week is joining us is Reverend Candace G, and we're acknowledging our colleague Cynthia Lippert. And so it will be a remembrance gathering, and there'll be a bit of a remembrance service, if you will. So if you would like to symbolically bring a candle, we're going to light a candle during that service. And then the following week will be Christine and Cherie, second and third Divine Science generation. So thank you again for joining us. We really appreciate your time and your energy for being with us today. And remember that divine science everywhere. Means God in all, through all, has all. And we thank you for joining us on Divine Science Everywhere on New Thought Media Network. See you next week.
Bye, y'all.
thank you.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.